Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Gurur Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nidhaye Sarva Lokanam Nidhaye Sarva Vidyanam Bhishaje Bhavaroginam Guruve Sarva Lokanam Shri Dakshinamoorthy Namaha Om Sai Ishwaraya Vidmahe Satya Devaya Dhimahi Tanna Sarva Prachodayat Om Sai Ishwaraya Vidmahe Satya Devaya Dhimahi Tanna Sarva Prachodayat Om Sai Ishwaraya Vidmahe Satya Devaya Dhimahi Tanna Sarva Prachodayat Om Namaste and welcome to Kaivalya Yoga Gurukulam on this Friday evening or Saturday morning, depending on which part of the world you are. Welcome to the Satsang. Let us begin the Satsang, as always, with a reverential prayer to Lord Ganesh, the divine energy born out of Shakti herself that resides within us, the elephantine energy that helps remove all instincts, impulses, clears the obstacles in the depths, from the depths of our mind, allowing our mind to open up channels that will help us proceed to higher dimensions. With this fervent prayer, let us invoke this divine energy of Ganesha. Om Gang Ganapataye Namaha 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 Om Gang गणपतये नमः। ॐ गं 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 गणपतये नमः। विघ्नविनाशक गणनाथा, विघ्नविनाशक गणनाथा, गजानना हे गजवदना, गजानना हे गजवदना, गजानना हे गजवदना। ॐ गं गणपतये नमः। ॐ गं गणपतये नमः। ॐ गं गणपतये नमः। With prayer in our hearts, let us invoke this mighty power of Ganesha. The mighty elephant walks into the innermost jungles of our mind. Cleansing it of all conditionalities, all memories from our past lives. In the innermost recesses of the mind, he opens the gates to higher wisdom. O Ganesha, stay with me, guide me, help me in this journey of spirituality. Om Gang Ganapataye Namaha. 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 Vighna Vinashaka Gananatha. Vighna Vinashaka Gananatha. Gajanana he Gajavadana. Gajanana he Gajavadana. Vighna Vinashaka Gananatha. Gajanana he Gajavadana. Gajanana he Gajavadana. Gananatha, 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 Pranavaswarupa, Gananatha, Pranavaswarupa, Gananatha, Partipurishwara, Gananatha. गणनाथा गजानना हे गजवदना गजानना हे गजवदना विघ्न विनाशक गणनाथा गजानना हे गजवदना गजानना हे गजवदना ॐ गणपतये नमः 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 ॐ गणपतये नमः. For those of you who have just joined, Namaste and welcome to this divine Satsang, which is completely and totally guided by the divine power of Shri Dakshinamoorthy. For the last 47 days, we have been studying the verses of the Dakshinamoorthy Stotram. And today is Friday, so we have a few questions that I would like to take up to answer. But before that, let us reverentially pay homage to this divine Guru with this simple sloka, but very powerful. Brahmanandam Paramasukadam Kaivalyam Jnanamurtim. Brahmanandam Paramasukhadam Kaivalyam Jnanamurtim Dvandvatitam Gaganasadrisham Tattvam Asyadilaksham Ekam Nityam Vimalam Achalam Sarvadi Sakshi Bhutam Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami Sadgurum Tam Namami Sadgurum Tam Namami. Having invoked this divine power from within and without, when the energy of God is omnipresent and all-pervasive, let us not get too concerned about going within and without. It doesn't matter if you're looking at a picture and talking to the picture, or you're going within into your chakras and meditating. It is exactly the same. There is no difference. Whether you talk to a stone, a picture, a wall, or a real person, all that matters is your tuning, your bhava, your attitude, your reverential prayer. The bhava is, what is the word for bhava in English? Perhaps there is no real word for bhava. Attitude and all of that is kind of indicates what that is. But the true feeling comes up when you're talking to God. And that feeling is what matters. It doesn't matter where the concentration lies, whether it is on a Shivalinga or as a statue of Krishna, or it is within in a chakra. It really doesn't matter. The bhava is what matters. So I think this bhava, if you will, leads us to the first question that was asked. A dear friend asked this a few days ago, and then 3 or 4 other people asked me. So I thought I should address it in case it's on the minds of many others as well. And for a long time, I too wrestled with this idea when I would listen to Baba's discourse. But let's read the question first. The question more or less is like this. I've reworded them just to fit it into this context and into the screen, of course. I still love the form of God. So it could be a form of Krishna, it could be the form of Sai, it could be the form of Rama, it could be Hanuman, it could be anything. I still love the form of God. If I move into the formless, will I lose connection with the beautiful form? So there is an hesitation in the mind. Why should I give up this form and move to the formless? For many months and perhaps years, I was wrestling with this concept of form and formless. Because with me, I never knew what God was. I had kind of a vague idea, of course, as growing up into religion and everything. But there was no personal connection. There's nothing that clicked with the concept of God. It was just like, okay, we have to pray or whatever. And as I grew into teenage, I really didn't even believe. So the only God I knew, the only Godhead I knew, the only Guru I knew was Sai Baba. And to me, he was everything. Even to this day, he is everything. Because for me, whatever I have gained in spirituality is through him. So for me, he is everything. And so there was a point in time when I was staying there, the first 3 years or so, I got so attached to the physical form of Sai and Swami, as we call him endearingly, that I couldn't think of anything else. So I used to literally meditate on that form, memorize every single aspect of his robe, every fold in his robe, every curl in his hair, if you will, literally memorize it, because in the bhajan hall we would sit just a couple of rows behind. I would be sitting and looking at him literally every day for 15-20 minutes, apart from other things like seeing him walking, talking and all of that, just sitting on that chair. And so that was an amazing darshan. So I would simply meditate on him top to bottom and then memorize it so I could practice in the next day morning for my meditation. I would practice the form. So when Baba would talk in his discourses, gave discourses on the Gita, he gave discourses in the Dashara festivals, he would give so many discourses. He would be so eager to share. And what he would share would be the highest wisdom. And I couldn't, for heaven's sake, relate to that. I would say, what is he saying? Why is he not telling us to fall in love with the God's form, with his form, and he would save us? And why is it that he is teaching us something which is so seemingly disconnected, the form and the formless? And I too had the same quandary as, what if I go to the formless? Will I lose the form? And therefore I was with the form. But what happened with the form was I kept going into the form more and more, searching and asking for more and more and more and more. And it came to a point when Swami said one day, do you want Swami or do you want Sai? And that's a long incident, but you probably have heard me saying this in some other situations as well. But the point is, I said I want both, not understanding what it meant. But he shook his head and he said, Swami is there today, he won't be there tomorrow. He will talk to you today, he may not talk to you tomorrow. He will be in Puttaparthi today, he will be in Vrindavan tomorrow, meaning his 2 ashrams. But Sai will be everywhere, above you, below you. Intene, gentene, ventene, kantene untadu Sai. Ippudu cheppu, he said, whom do you want? And that's when I realized he's talking about his tattva, the essence that he represents. His body he's carried an essence. That was the essence we fell in love with, right? And his body was a medium for us to tune in. Even to this day, his body, his form reminds us of something profound. For those of us who follow him, for those of us who follow Krishna, Rama, and all of it, it's the same thing. When we look at the form of our choice, that form, through the form, we get to the formless. You can never get to the formless without the form. So there is no such thing in my experience and in my limited perception, in my humble offering today for your own consideration and ponderance, if you will, is the form will never go, because it is every time you think of the formless, the word formless has a form in it, right? Nirguna has a guna in it. Nirakara has a akara in it. So it is through the form you can only go into the formless. Every time I think of the form comes to me. The form is the one that introduces me to the formless. That is why in the Guru Gita, that is why in the study of the Guru, you never forget the Guru even after enlightenment. After whatever stage you reach, wherever you are, you always pay respects to the Guru, and through the Guru you go to the formless. There is no way, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, right, in the beginning of the first chapter, in the 12th chapter, the very first verse, couple of verses, he says, people, because we are creatures with forms, we have bodies, it is very difficult to relate to the formless, and therefore through the form you could get to the formless. But what happens if you go to the formless? Will you come back to the form? There is no such thing. The form will never let go, because the form has formed the basis for you to reach to the formless. In other words, you cook in a vessel and the food is ready to eat. You just wash the vessel and keep it for the next cooking again. You don't throw the vessel away, because you need the vessel every time to cook the food. And therefore it is like this. The essence of Sai comes to us, and the omnipresence is experienced. The name and the form is experienced in an omnipresent, omnipotent, as an energy, as the very life force, if you will. But the form never goes away. It can never go away. So don't put aside this fear that somehow when you go into this formless state, you will forget the form, and it's going to be a dry, placid, desert-like condition where it's just me and the I, and it is the most benign and most beautiful experience. Now, having said that, I want to share with you something personal. The more I get the experience of the formless, the more Baba comes in my dreams, the more I find him guiding me. It's magnificent. Sorry. The more he comes and the more he guides, the more closer you feel. It's almost like he is there every moment. The Guru never lets you go. He will never let you go, because that is the nature. And in that ultimate oneness, you're becoming one with the Guru, the Satguru, the Paramaguru, the Mahaguru. All of that merge into the oneness. So I see no fear of separation. So don't hesitate and don't think it's a one-time deal and you're somehow going to forget Sai or Rama or Krishna and go into this very dry philosophical world. It doesn't happen like that. There is so much beauty and there is so much more presence. All these energies, like we talk about Ganesha, the reason why I call them energies is they begin to manifest in that formless state. They begin to manifest and they assume any form that you want. It's a very different dimension. It's a whole different dimension where there's a different reality that you tap into, a completely different reality which is as real as this world. That is the beauty of that. And then there are many, many worlds like that. So the path into the formless it's a very beautiful, beautiful path. You're never alone in that path. If you think the satsang is good, multiply that by 1,000 times when you get the satsang of the divine beings. That is the beauty of this path. So don't hesitate. In calling out to the formless through the form, you are invoking the complete Purna Tattva. In other words, the complete essence of the Guru you're invoking. And you're allowing that to become part of you. Hope that makes some sense. All right, let's go to the next question. Let me cough a little bit. Sorry about that. Okay, why does God test those in the spiritual path? All saints have undergone so many difficult tests. I am hesitant of taking to the spiritual path because of this fear of being tested. So this email was about how Mirabai was tested, how so many saints, Tyagaraja was tested, so many people were tested, all these devotees have undergone so many tests. So if I also take to the spiritual path and go searching for God, what happens to my family, my children? I love them all. I don't want to be tested and separated from them. understand one thing. You and I see these devotees being tested and as if they were suffering. They were never suffering. Testing is one thing, suffering is entirely different thing. Without going into the path of divinity, without realizing our higher self, without calling out to the divine in our lives, we are missing what life is all about. And therefore, we are actually suffering. What we think is good is, for the time being, it may be good. For the time being, I have a very good family and everything is going fine. But what happens if there is a loss? God forbid. What happens if there is a sickness? What happens if there is a separation of some kind? Oh, no, I don't want to think about that. That is what I don't want that to happen. Let me tell you, let me burst the bubble for those of us who fear that somehow this kind of unique testing and suffering is only for those who take the God path. There is a lady who came to Buddha, as the story goes, as I read it in one of the parables of Buddha. She comes crying with a dead child in her arms and says, bring me life, bring life back into this baby. I prayed for this baby, I cried for this baby, and this baby is taken away from me. And Buddha tells her, I will bring the life back into your child. Go and get me a handful of mustard seeds. I think it's mustard seeds, but let details not bother you. So he says, get me a handful of mustard seeds from a home where there is no death and no suffering. Go get me that and I will revive your child. And this lady goes to every home in the village, nearby villages, runs helter-skelter. But everyone, no one has escaped suffering. No one has escaped death. No one has escaped loss. That is part of life. It doesn't come to you, or it is not imposed on you by some God who's sitting and watching and saying, okay, now she's coming to my path or he is coming to my path. All right, I'm going to test you. It doesn't work like that. This is our imagination of a very limited God. There is no God sitting waiting to test you. Then what is this test about, right? When we take to this path of spirituality through introspection, through meditation, through prayer, through becoming mindful of what we speak, what we listen and all that, we suddenly become aware of our own weaknesses, of our own dark spots inside us, deep inside the mind. They come out. They begin to come out, begin to come to the conscious mind. And the conscious mind experiences them. Sometimes consciously in meditation, you are able to dissolve it with sadhana. That is why sadhana becomes a very important integral part. Through namasmarana, chanting the name of God, we can eliminate those dark fears that we have held across many lifetimes. Okay, instincts across many lifetimes. So all those, when they begin to surface, because we are now opening up to higher dimensions, the lower tendencies, the animal tendencies, all of that which we have nurtured and cultured over lifetimes, come to the surface to get out of the system. And when that happens, it manifests either internally and we are able to handle it because of our intense sadhana, or it manifests outside in our lives through separation, sickness, health problems, or something or the other. It causes us to draw, in order to draw us more to the divine self. And so what you do at that point is you do more intense sadhana. You do more and more of sadhana. So these little dirt, if you will, all this comes out and eventually they'll get cleared, and all that will remain is complete good in and good out. There is no doubt about this. So you're not suffering specially because you're taken to the path of God. Never understand it this way. In fact, if there is any karmic, and we'll talk about karma, I guess, in the next question or so. If there is any influence of karma, and because of my past, I am going to suffer now, because of God's grace, that suffering is minimized to a large, large extent. Now, talking of these saints like Mirabai and others, they didn't know they were suffering. They didn't even know they were being tested. You and I consider that, though, my God, she was tested, somebody gave her poison to drink and this and that. But they were completely so madly in love with the divine that nothing bothered for them. So that is an extreme case. Like you have extreme yogis, you have these extreme devotees who set the highest role model. They were not tested in any way. They just saw God everywhere. everywhere. Even when Mirabai was given poison, she said, this is God is giving, this must be something from God, and she drank it and it became nectar. In other words, the poison lost its effect because in her mind there was no concept of poison or fear or anything like that. It had been completely cleansed by Krishna consciousness. That is the beauty. And in those moments of divine connection, you will not feel the suffering. You will not feel the suffering. You will not feel tested. You will feel no loss. In fact, there will be no loss in your consciousness. Completely. Everything else will be taken care of. Ananyas chintayanto mam ye janaha paryupasate. Well, it ends in yogakshemam vahamyam. Nitya viyuktanam yogakshemam vahamyam. I'm sorry, I didn't get it, but it just came to my tongue. So what Krishna says here is, whoever surrenders to me completely, I will take care of the welfare. This is a promise of the most supreme Godhead. Krishna promises us, I will take care of their welfare. You come and surrender to me. In other words, that surrender, that's what we spoke about yesterday. That surrender is allowing God to take over our lives. How much more greater is it? This is the energy, the divine intelligence that orchestrates the universe. 99% or 95% of the processes in our body is automated. How is that intelligence in working? Right? Who designed it? So to that intelligence, we hand over our lives. You see, you can do all this, take over my life also. Let me enjoy just being in your company, like Sudama did. Just being in the company. And that joy, you will be in the joy of the company of the divine. And if there's any karmic retributions and karmic obligations, he takes care of that. In other words, you don't feel it. If there is a disease and pain supposed to come and go, it will come and go. It won't bother you. See the life of Ramana Maharishi, the life of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. These are all great role models to show us how they didn't feel any pain. They were not crying and saying, why am I making me suffer and all of that. They were only yearning for God's presence, and that's all that was. The yearning. So please do not ever think that somehow when you take to the path of spirituality, life is going to be very difficult, number one. Number two, you will be disconnected from your family and your near and loved ones. It is the furthest from the truth. In fact, you'll begin to see God in everyone and everything, and you will embrace everyone, and not only your family, your idea of your family will become bigger and bigger and bigger. And you'll begin to embrace everyone, the whole world, as your family. So that is the beauty of the spiritual path and the path to God. Don't let an imaginary fear, this is an imaginary fear, hold you back. Trust in the divine process. Trust in the divine mind, the cosmic intelligence. Trust, that is what faith comes from. Faith in the one consciousness that has become all of this. And faith that one consciousness is within me. And prayer to allow that consciousness to begin to operate. And that presence is beautiful. So don't let fear hold you back. These were very good questions that I received over the last 2 or 3 weeks. And then we go to the next one. So one lady asked me this today, but after 4 or 5 other people asked me similar questions in many other ways, I decided I'll take it up today in the Q&A. So the question is, what happens if one gets enlightened or one goes to God? It kind of ties into all that we were talking now. So it kind of relates to each other, I think. What happens to our karma? Because aren't we doing all this to escape our past karma? Let me be clear in how I have understood it. Some of you may understand it even better. So allow me to present my perspectives on this. There is Sunder, and there is the higher self that is playing the Sunder. Okay? So Ishvara, Guru, Atma, all of this is one. That is what we study in Dakshinamurthy. Ultimately, ultimate analysis, all are one. But in this so-called illusion that we are in, I see Sunder sees himself separately, and then the I in him is separate. The I is watching. the bigger I, God is the pure witness. That God within me, the I higher self, is simply watching Dakshinamurti. He seated in Chinmudra and lost in his own consciousness. He opens his eyes, awakens and say, all of this is my dream. He closes his eyes, goes into that dream. So he is fully aware, right? But Sunder, one of his dreams, Sunder is indulging in a lot of actions, thinking Sunder is a doer. When I am doing something, thinking I am the doer, if you ask me, who's doing the satsang? I say, I. Who are you? I am Sunder. Sunder is doing the satsang. If Sunder takes the ownership of the satsang, I am doing it, I have bought this and I have bought that, and Maya helps me, and together we are doing the satsang. We take ownership of our action, then we are bound to that karma. And the effect of that karma, I will have to face, good or bad. So we can never escape. Sunder can never escape the consequences of karma. Then how do I escape? Because the I in me is never affected by that. Let Sunder play that role. Okay. Let us understand karma itself in a better way. The best analogy that I've come across in Vedantic literature is that of an archer, a warrior. He has the sheath behind. You call that the sheath, right? The quiver. Quiver, not the sheath. Sheath is for sword. Sorry. I showed how good an archer I am. Anyway, so you have a quiver in the back, right? With a lot of arrows. You've seen these pictures. The warrior has a quiver with a lot of arrows. He's got the bow in one hand. He's got the arrow in one hand. Okay. How is this analogy related to karma? So, the arrow in his hand is one type of karma he's holding on to, about to commit, right? The arrow is not yet shot. The arrow in his hand is about to be strung, or maybe he has strung it in the bow and waiting. So that arrow is about to let go, so the karma is waiting to happen. So that is one kind of karma, waiting to happen at this point. Vartamana, Agami, it's called Agami karma, Vartamana karma. So there are Kriyamana karma. So there are many names for this. Agami is a very popular name. Agami karma. The arrow in the hand of the warrior is Agami, waiting to be indulged in. Right? What about the quiver is full of arrows? Those arrows are waiting to be taken in the hand. So they are the effect of all past karmas sitting there. Right? They are called Sanchita karmas. Sanchita karma is karmas and all the actions of our past. It could be yesterday. If I had something very hot and spicy in the night, it is going into the quiver to trouble you the next day morning. Correct? So that is waiting. Like this, there are so many past. That's why we talk of subconscious, unconscious mind in modern parlance, but we talk of chitta, samskaras, vasanas in the Vedantic yogic context. So all of this sits in the quiver. Arrow in the hand, agami karma. Arrows in the quiver, sanchita karma. But there is one arrow that has already been let go. This is a warrior. He's fighting. He's going 1, 2, 3. He's shooting arrows after that. Sometimes he's like 3 arrows and shoots them. So all these arrows have let out and they are flying towards their target. Those arrows that have left the bow and gone, those are called prarabdha. Prarabdha karma. How does these... So these are 3 types of karmas. Sanchita karma from the past, Agami karma, which is right now in your hand, and Prarabdha that is already let loose. So what is that? What does that mean? How does that relate to us? Today what you and I are experiencing in our lives, whether you have a 65-inch TV, whether you have a food in the plate or not, whether you are healthy or not, whatever it is, right? Whatever, look around you. Know that this is the effect of which of these karmas? The effect of the arrows that have already let go. Effect of the arrows that have already gone from the bow. The fact that you and I have taken a human birth and born is the effect of that arrow already gone off the bow. So we are here to reap the effect of all those karmas that are already let gone. In other words, the seeds are sown, they are sprouting, you can't do anything about it now. The arrow cannot be taken back. The arrow has to go. So even if this archer becomes enlightened, the effects of those arrows will still continue in his life. Think of Ramana Maharishi who had cancer. Think of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa who had cancer. Think of Sai Baba who broke his hip and everything. All of these affects the human body. The human body has done certain actions and therefore that will continue. The I in me is never affected. Once I associate myself with the bigger I, then whatever happens with these arrows, it doesn't bother to me, right? So what is happening now is prarabdha. We are understanding karma theory in general. Then you do your own meditations and understand it better. What happens to the one in my hand is at this moment, what can I do with it? I can let go and engage more and more, or I can drop the arrow and say no. We'll understand that in a bit. So this is the present moment. I can let go of the arrow and engage in more karmic retributions. Because the moment I let go, I have to bear the effect of wherever the arrow goes, right? No matter what I do, I will still bear that. So let's hold on to this thought, because you're not going to drop the arrow. You're not going to give up your family and say, okay, then I'm not going to do any action and sit quiet. That is not what Gita taught us. So we'll hold on to that thought right now. But we are not going to let go of the arrow also. Wait a minute. You're saying don't let go of the arrow, and he says don't drop the arrow. What do we do with that? Okay, so let's hold on to that. What happens to these arrows in the back? When we say that enlightenment frees you from karma, when we say grace frees you from karma, when we say spiritual awakening burns off your past karmas, that is what happens. All of these karmas become useless. Why? Because this arrow in your hand, if it has let go, you will reach for the other one, right? But you are not letting go of this arrow, which we are going to come to in a bit. So when the arrow is in this hand, this quivers, the arrows stay in this quiver only. And when they stay in the quiver for ages, slowly they become rusted, and slowly they become useless, and slowly they fade away. They become useless. So all your past karmas, we don't know what they are at this point. What we are experiencing is prarabdha, already the arrows that have gone through. And they are continuing to, right? Because we are engaging in the doership. This past will fade away. It's like the seeds that are stored in a box which are never sown. What will happen to the seeds? They will dry, they will fade away, they will become useless. So that's what will happen. So they will fade away. But they will fade away only when, so in our reality, what happens when we practice spirituality, when we engage in spiritual awakening, when we realize Sunder is no longer the doer, the Krishna is the one who does this, Sai is the one who does this, the divine Shiva, Mahadev is the one who's the one, the Shakti principle is the one that is doing all of this. Then what happens? The ownership goes away, and so these past just drop off. Now what happens to the one in the hand? This is where Krishna says, this is what he told Arjuna, this whole concept of Gita and karma is what you do with the arrow in your hand. Is inaction the answer, therefore, to escape from karma? No. Take the arrow and shoot, but don't be the doer. Know as you fly the arrow out of this bow. I told you I'm not a good archer, I don't know these terms. As you fly the arrow, I don't think you fly the arrow. As you let go, shoot the arrow. Shoot sounds too violent. So I'm going to say let go. So as you let go of this arrow from the bow, you don't be the doer. What does that mean? Don't know that you are not the doer. Know that God is doing this. The higher self is doing this, prompting me. I am merely an instrument and allowing the energy to carry on. So I don't take ownership of that action. And because I am being an instrument, I will make sure that I pay full attention and complete mindfulness. There is excellence in what I do. And yet there is no attachment to the action, no attachment to the fruits. Did it go? Did it reach the target? What happened? Oh my God, I have let out so many arrows. What has happened to all the arrows? I am not the doer. It doesn't matter. Something is prompting me to do something, I will just carry on that prompt. This is a higher command. That is why the way you handle that arrow in your hand is you convert those tasks into nishkama karma, selfless work. Convert your work. If you're going to work in the office, make that into a worship. Ask yourself, you have to figure out how to do that. Make that into a worship. If you're cooking for your kids, and if you're cooking for your husbands, and you're cooking day in and day out, or cooking for your wife, you make that a worship. Figure, how can I make this into a worship? When it becomes a worship, then I put in my very best, and yet I'm not attached. When you offer flowers to the altar, you don't offer faded flowers, you offer fresh flowers. Right? It is the same way. When you make everything as an offering, then you're not bound by that karma. It becomes an offering. You're freeing yourself. And yet you're doing all the duties that you have incurred upon yourself through prarabdha. The fact that I am here, Sunder, and I'm married to my wife, and I have to take care of my family, I may have children, I may have all of this, and my duty is here. It means all of this is because of my prarabdha, which I'm here. So let me now engage in these actions, but let me know now that this action is not mine. I'm going to do this as an offering. And therefore, I want to be freed from karma, and karma begins to free. So the karma in your hand is entirely up to you. Don't be the doer. Be an instrument of the divine. Then you're freed. Because you're not the doer. And then what happens? Because you are not the doer, you will never reach for your own past. And these arrows will fade away. Because the divine energy will continue to feed the arrows that you need, not from your past. You will not take it out of your past actions which are born out of fear and all of that. All of that will fade away. This is the beauty of the karmic law. There is so much to learn. Someday when we study Gita, or at least some portions of the Gita, we'll understand this better. But hopefully it was a little more clearer. Think about this. Not all these become very clear in one 15-minute, 10-minute setting. It needs a lot of meditation and contemplation. But think, how can I engage in acts that actually free me? Not inaction, but action without desires for the fruit. And one last thing, that doesn't make your action any less. In fact, it helps it make it more excellent. That's what my entire presentation on Zodiac of Human Excellence that I did over 12 sessions through another forum was exactly for that. The point is, you will achieve excellence when you know you're not the doer. When you're not the doer. That is why actors do a very good job, because they know they are not that role they are playing, they are only acting, and therefore they do their best in the role they play. But if they become one with the role, they cannot act. They will be really crying, and they won't know when to stop crying, they won't know what their dialogues are, they will not perform their role well. Know that you are an actor, and you have been given a role to play. Play that role beautifully, whether it is a role of a beggar, whether it is a role of a sick person, whether it's a role of a lonely person, whether it's a role of a king, whether it's a role of a pauper. Play it with joy. Joyfully participate in this life, knowing that the real you is always been free and will always be free, never be tainted by any of this. This is the great understanding that will get us closer and closer to these divine beings that are waiting to serve us, guide us, pull us into that dimension where there is only love and joy and happiness. Once you begin to taste that, then all these karmic offerings become easier to understand, become and even more easier to implement. So let us therefore, with reverence, invoke this highest consciousness, Mahadev, today in our homes, in our hearts, in the form of Shri Dakshinamoorthy, the Supreme Guru, whom we see as with a form but who represents the formless. A beautiful marriage between the form and the formless. Let us therefore invoke this divine energy of Mahadev and pray to him to clear our mind, clear our perceptions, and grant us this enlightened presence, his enlightened company. So we journey this path together with the divine. Om Bhuh Purusham Shri Dakshinamoorthy Rupaya Shri Samba Sadashivam Avahayami. Om Bhuvah Purusham Shri Dakshinamoorthy Rupaya Shri Samba Sadashivam Avahayami. Om Suvahah Purusham Shri Dakshinamoorthy Rupaya Shri Samba Sadashivam Avahayami. Om Bhurbhuvasuvahah Purusham Shri Dakshinamoorthy Rupaya Shri Samba Sadashivam Avahayami. Om. Shri Guru, Paramaguru, Parameshti Guru, Paratpara Guru, Mahaguru Swarupaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Dakshinamurtaye. Mahyam Medham Prajnam Prayachha Swaha. Shri Guru, Paramaguru, Parameshti Guru, Paratpara Guru, Mahaguru Swarupaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Dakshinamurtaye. Mahyam Medham Prajnam Prayachha Swaha. Shri Guru, Paramaguru, Parameshti Guru, Paratpara Guru, Mahaguru Swarupaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Dakshinamurtaye. Mahyam Medham Prajnam Prayachha Swaha. Shri Guru, Paramaguru, Parameshti Guru, Paratpara Guru, Mahaguru Swarupaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Dakshinamurtaye. Mahyam Medham Prajnam Prayachha Swaha. Shri Guru, Paramaguru, Parameshti Guru, Paratpara Guru, Mahaguru Swarupaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Dakshinamurtaye. Mahyam Medham Prajnam Prayachha Swaha. Shri Guru, Paramaguru, Parameshti Guru, Paratpara Guru, Mahaguru Swarupaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Dakshinamurtaye. Mahyam Medham Prajnam Prayachha Swaha. Shri Guru, Paramaguru, Parameshti Guru, Paratpara Guru, Mahaguru Swarupaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Dakshinamurtaye. Mahyam Medham Prajnam Prayachha Swaha. Shri Guru, Paramaguru, Parameshti Guru, Paratpara Guru, महागुरु स्वरूपाय ॐ नमो भगवते दक्षिणामूर्तये मह्यं मेधां प्रज्ञां प्रयच्छ स्वाहा। श्री गुरु परमगुरु परमेष्टिगुरु परात्पर गुरु महागुरु स्वरूपाय ॐ नमो भगवते दक्षिणामूर्तये मह्यं मेधां प्रज्ञां प्रयच्छ स्वाहा। श्री गुरु परमगुरु परमेष्टिगुरु परात्पर गुरु महागुरु स्वरूपाय ॐ नमो भगवते दक्षिणामूर्तये मह्यं मेधां प्रज्ञां प्रयच्छ स्वाहा। श्री गुरु परमगुरु परमेष्टिगुरु परात्पर गुरु महागुरु स्वरूपाय ॐ नमो भगवते दक्षिणामूर्तये मह्यं मेधां प्रज्ञां प्रयच्छ स्वाहा। ॐ सद्गुरुवे नमः। 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 सद्गुरुवे नमः। ॐ सद्गुरुवे नमः। गोविंद बोलो गुरु साई बोलो। गोविंद बोलो गुरु साई बोलो। गोपाल बोलो गुरु साई बोलो। गोपाल बोलो गुरु साई बोलो। गोविंद बोलो गुरु साई बोलो। गोविंद बोलो गुरु साई बोलो। ॐ सद्गुरुवे नमः। 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 शिरडी साई बोलो शिव गुरु नाम बोलो। शिरडी साई बोलो शिव गुरु नाम बोलो। सत्य साई बोलो, सतगुरु नाम बोलो, सत्य साई बोलो, सतगुरु नाम बोलो। साई राम, साई राम, साई राम, साई राम। प्रेम साई बोलो, पर ब्रह्मा बोलो, प्रेम साई बोलो, पर ब्रह्मा बोलो, पति बाबा बोलो, परमात्मा बोलो, पति बाबा बोलो, परमात्मा बोलो। साई राम, साई राम, साई राम, साई राम। ओम सद्गुरुवे नमः, 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 ओम सद्गुरुवे नमः। समस्तलोका सुखिनो भवन्तु, समस्तलोका सुखिनो भवन्तु, समस्तलोका सुखिनो भवन्तु। May all the beings in all the worlds be happy. जय बोलो पवन पुत्र हनुमान की जय, सियावर रामचंद्र की जय, सतगुरु साईनाथ महाराज की जय। नमः पार्वती पतये, हर हर महादेव। ओम शांति शांति शांति।